that, and it's right there, right there, right there.
That was a lot, Robin. That was a lot. Dear Evan Hansen, critically acclaimed Broadway musical turned horror movie. After 4 attempts, I finally watched Dear Evan Hansen to its completion, and that was uncomfortable. That was painful to watch. I am a theater gay. I'm obsessed with musicals. I love musicals, and this movie made me hate them. Dear Evan Hansen has been spoken about ad nauseum, right? It came out in 2021, and at the time, people were throwing their 2 cents left and right on the internet, and I didn't because I didn't have a YouTube channel, but also because I avoided this film due to its very triggering topics. It deals with self-harm, suicide, mental health, anxiety. And if at first that was my main deterrent to watching this film, after watching it, it really should have been this. If you're somehow not familiar with Dear Evan Hansen, it tells the story of a 17-year-old high school student named Evan Hansen who gets sucked into this big misunderstanding in regards to this other kid who killed himself, and how his parents kind of project their guilt onto him and sort of turn him into a surrogate son. And lies are being told, born out of this really dumb misunderstanding. And though he has a fairly healthy amount of chances to come clean and tell the truth, he doesn't. Because there's a girl involved, and there's a crush that speaks louder than common sense. And the film could bring up several moral questions about the topics being handled and the motivations of the character and how they relate to the issues being handled. But I feel like somehow the movie just misses all of those opportunities. And rumor has it, the stage play is actually a lot more upbeat and lighthearted and more pleasant to watch. But when they adapted it onto the big screen, they kind of shut off any and all comedic undertones and levity, so they could make this a painful watch for anyone who dared to watch it. Now, the main point of controversy has always been the casting of Ben Platt as the titular character, and I get it, right? Ben Platt was the original actor who played the character on Broadway. He was born in 1993. The film came out in 2021, but it was filmed during the pandemic in 2020, so he was 27. And he looks freakishly old, too old to be a high school student. They used this weird type of makeup on his face that he just looks like a wax doll that's been powdered to death. And the fact that he clearly had to shave every single day on the hour to maintain this very clean-shaven face of a 17-year-old that doesn't look 17 because you can tell that he's been shaving, it doesn't work, and it comes across as creepy. In fact, Evan Hansen looks like a scrawny, middle-aged dude who lives in his mom's basement and for some reason goes to school every day and hangs out with these visibly younger kids, and the dynamics are wild. But in his defense, all the other characters that are supposedly his age aren't that far off in real life. Caitlin Dever was 24 at the time of filming, Amanda Stenberg was 22, Colton Ryan, who plays Connor, was 25, and Nick Dodani, who plays Jared, was Ben Platt's age. He was also 27. So they're all kind of on the same boat. But that said, they do look significantly younger than Ben. And this was clearly Nepo casting. You have it on record, the team saying that the one non-negotiable was that they had to have Ben Platt play Evan Hansen because he originated the character and he had a deeper, fuller understanding of the character than anyone else could. Also, his dad, Mark Platt, whom you may know as the guy who had to fly to New York to scold Rachel Zegler for opposing war crimes, is a producer of this film. So the backlash wasn't surprising, but there is also the way that they chose to portray this character and the story. Listen, this is a musical, and musicals are meant to be dumb, right? People break out in song and dance, and they make these huge musical numbers that really pull you in and make you, like, enjoy the story. And then you have Dear Evan Hansen, who cuts out all of the joy of the stage play. They cut out 8 or 9 songs of the original soundtrack as well, add a couple more that aren't really needed, but it feels like a musical filmed as a non-musical. You have these musical numbers shoehorned in between these awkward conversations, and save for 1 or 2 numbers, all of them just feel odd and wrong and unnecessary. And I never say that about a musical, because musicals are meant to be this kind of out of body experience that make no sense in real life, but it's a musical. You give it some grace because it's camp, it's extra, it's fun. Not this. This is a horror movie. But let's get into the story because there's a lot to talk about. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe down below. Especially if you want me to review more musicals. There's a few other really bad ones that I haven't watched yet, like Cats. I know, I have never seen Cats, the musical. I'm one of the lucky ones. But I'm willing to volunteer myself to not be one of the lucky ones and to actually put myself through it. So yeah, make sure to subscribe and let's get into the story. Evan Hansen is a 17-year-old high school student who suffers from anxiety and depression. But there's something to be said about doing too much is bad. And I think that Ben Platt's performance as this anxiety-ridden kid goes a little too far into the realm of I'm uncomfortable. I don't feel sympathetic towards him as much as I feel uncomfortable that I have to watch him try to interact with people and try to talk to people. It's done so bizarrely heavy-handedly that I think they miss out on a good opportunity to make the audience fall in love with the character. And then add that to the fact they cut out a few key songs that introduce supporting characters and really let you understand what is going on other than Evan Hansen. And when they cut that out, the movie is basically just about him. Like, you get to know this kid way better than you should get to know anyone. And as a fan of the songs before the film, I have them on my playlist. I gotta say, they just don't work. But we start off with Waving Through a Window. And Ben's vocals are good. I don't think they work as well in movie form as they did in the original recording of the cast for the Broadway musical. But he's here. He looks freakishly way too old to be at this school, and he doesn't really have any friends other than this other kid called Jared, who is more of a family friend. He's not really a nice person, and apparently his role was reduced from the stage play to the film because he did add some comedic relief to the original story. But I guess they just wanted to depress people as much as possible with this film, so they cut out all the fun shit. They're like, nope, you are getting depressed watching this. His life at home isn't ideal. His mom is a nurse and his dad abandoned them when he was 7. His mom is quite absent because she does have the struggle of having to support the entire family on her own, so she keeps taking extra shifts at the hospital, fearing budget cuts. But she is very supportive of her son going to therapy, taking his medication, because this boy is not functional. And in fact, one of the most surprising elements of the film to me was that Evan Hansen isn't the one that took his own life at the beginning of the film, because every interaction that he has or has to have with anyone just looks painful to him. Like, he looks like he's struggling to exist, to even breathe, let alone talk to people or make meaningful connections or have interactions with anyone. And at school, he has a crush on Zoe. Zoe is this younger student who is played by Caitlin Dever, and she does look age appropriate. And her older brother, Connor, is the catalyst for this story. Connor is a troubled boy. And one of the biggest disservices of the film is that we don't get to really understand how Connor was better before his passing. But I guess that's also part of the message, that when someone takes their own life, you've missed out on the opportunity to get to know them and get to really understand them and see the good side in them, and you just ignored them, therefore they off themselves. Evan has one interaction with Connor. Connor thinks that Evan is laughing at him, so he screams in his face, which Zoe witnesses. And Evan has this assignment from his therapist where he has to write himself letters, pep talks, like, "Dear Evan Hansen, today's gonna be a great day and here's why." So there's a big misunderstanding that really kickstarts the whole story. Evan is in the library of his school. He writes a letter to himself. It starts with, "Dear Evan Hansen, today's actually not a great day." And then he writes a little bit more, including about Zoe, talking about how if she knew or if I could talk to her, because he struggles to talk to anyone that isn't Jared. And he signs it off, "Sincerely, me." And somehow accidentally prints it at the school's library. So while he's waiting in the queue to get the paper, Connor apologizes for screaming at him the day before and offers to sign his cast. Evan has a cast, and this is a very important element of the story because the origin of the cast is only really revealed towards the end of the film. But for all intents and purposes, Evan broke his arm the summer before, and now he has a cast. Connor is the only kid that offers to sign it to him. He does. And then he finds the letter that Evan printed for himself, and he sees the name Zoe there, and he's very manic. He's clearly going through a lot, and he freaks out. He lashes out at Evan, pushes him to the floor, and storms off with a letter in his pocket. And days later, Evan finds out through Connor's parents that he actually committed suicide. But his parents found this letter in his pocket, which starts with Dear Evan Hansen, talks about how bad he feels and how maybe no one would notice if he disappeared the day before. Signed, Sincerely Me. They assume this is Connor's suicide letter addressed to his only friend, Evan Hansen. And the conversation is really disturbing, because here you have two grieving parents who are just desperate to cling on to something positive about their son who just committed suicide. And then you have Evan, who can't even speak to delivery drivers to say thank you or hello. And he's trying to get the words out, explaining to them that he's the one who wrote it, that it's an assignment from his therapist, but he can't. And seeing the pain that these parents are in, he kind of quietly goes along with the lie, not really knowing how to interject and break their hearts all over again. Like, actually, your son didn't have a friend. I wasn't his friend. He died completely alone, and it's your fault. So there's a lot of trying to find who to blame, or trying to offset the guilt by painting the past as something that wasn't the case. The day after, Evan is invited to Connor's family's house, and there's a lot of different dynamics going on. Zoe didn't like her brother. She isn't shy about admitting that he was quite a bad person, whereas Connor's mom is just trying to find the positive. She really is trying to redeem her son's memory and believe that he didn't take his own life being completely alone in the world, though, girl, that's kind of what happened. And then you have Connor's stepdad, who is almost stoic and robotic in nature, almost like he's not really yet coming to terms with the fact that Connor is gone. And they ask Evan to talk about stories that he's had with Connor in the past, and this is when we get For Forever, my favorite song of the musical, which in this case is so creepy. They're at the dinner table and they're all talking, and suddenly Ben just starts singing. And it's very bizarre because he's the only one singing, and the characters are responding to him and interjecting with normal dialogue, but then Evan keeps singing at them, and it's like he sings at them, not to them. He's very intense. Probably the right intensity for stage, but in the film, it's just uncomfortable. It is bizarre. In the song, he talks about how he broke his arm when he was climbing a tree with Connor. They were really close friends, and Connor is the one that helped him. So now he has to back up those lies with fake emails, which he gets his friend Jared to falsify. And there was no reason to do it. I think that Evan could have just like, okay, I've told you a nice story about your son. Like, let me just now step back. But because his mom is so absent, and because these parents just lost their son, they kind of use each other as like surrogate families. They start leaning on each other, unfairly so. These parents are putting all of their grievances and their guilt onto this clearly disturbed, depressed teenager, and keep ignoring their daughter's concerns, who keeps telling them that Connor wasn't necessarily a good person. And it almost feels like she doesn't feel loved or appreciated because everything is about Connor all the time. It also doesn't help that only 3 people of this entire cast can actually sing, and that would be Ben Platt, Amanda Stenberg, and Colton Ryan. So Connor, Alana, and Evan. Everyone else, they're not singers. So it's the same problem I had with Mean Girls the musical. The actress they chose to play Katie Heron, she's not a singer. It sounded awful. It just threw the whole movie out of balance, out of whack. And in this case, everyone is just terrible at singing, except for 3 people. And there's a few bizarre scenes, but there's a top 2. The first one is when he's talking to Zoe at their house, and Zoe's obviously struggling to grieve her brother because she never had good interactions with him, and she didn't even feel like he liked her in the first place. So Evan, to, I guess, appease her guilt and help her grieve, starts making up a bunch of stuff that Connor supposedly told him about his sister, but it's actually things that Evan noticed about her in a romantic context. So you have Evan singing to Zoe, telling her all these beautiful things about her as if it was her dead brother, but it's coming from his romantic interest for her, and it's so creepy. And this is around the time where another student at school, Alana is a character that was expanded for the film. She is a girl at the school who also suffers from depression, and she takes medication, but her shtick is different. Whereas Evan is clearly unable to exist peacefully in life, Alana is able to mask on the outside what she's feeling on the outside. She's able to maintain herself anonymous. So, like, you wouldn't be able to tell that she's struggling with mental health, but you also wouldn't notice her being a happy person. She's just existing in a corner. No one really takes notice. And she comes up with an idea to create a memorial for Connor to also spread awareness to these kinds of situations. And I think the film is about a decade too late. I don't see this happening today or even in 2020 when this was being filmed, but Evan gives a speech at school and people film and it goes viral. And all of a sudden it becomes this like moment, this viral moment that you may be struggling now, but don't worry, you're not alone. You will be found. And it doesn't work. Not to say that mental health conversations aren't important to have, but I don't see this type of conversation having the same impact nowadays. I feel like if this speech went viral today, you'd go to the comment section on X and 98% of the comments would be far-right extremists saying, well, he shouldn't have been such a weak soy boy bitch. You'd 100% see half of the audience blaming him for taking his own life and for not being strong enough to overcome it, and for the world building a culture where men are being coddled. I don't think that it would become this empowering moment where people start sharing their stories and realizing that they're not alone and that they will be found. However, in the midst of all of these like emotionally strong scenes with very creepy undertones, this was the one scene that made me almost tear up when Connor's stepfather is reading comments online, seeing that people are relating to his story, posting on his Facebook wall again, this movie really is a decade too late, but seeing people posting on his Facebook wall, like, I wish I had met you, I'm so sorry I didn't take the time to notice you. He finally is able to cry over Connor's passing, which up to this point he hadn't been able to. And this is something that Zoe notices. She notices that Evan's presence in the family dynamics and Evan's contributions to honoring Connor's memory is helping the family grieve in a healthier way. Even she's able to grieve her brother's death a little bit more because finally she understands that he didn't hate her. He was just very disturbed and he just didn't have the vernacular that he thought he possessed to express what he felt for her genuinely. So there is a moral conundrum being presented here. Like, obviously, Evan's lies are terrible, and he does have several opportunities throughout to come clean because initially Zoe is kind of suspicious of the fact that they were best friends when the only interaction she saw them two having was Connor screaming in his face. But he doubles down on the lies and he keeps building on them and building on them. And on one side, one could kind of argue, though it's not right what he's doing, the fact that he's helping the family grieve in a healthier way should be counted as something positive. But at the same time, there's another element here that he's essentially giving his parents a different version of what their son was and what he was going through. He reiterates several times that Connor was doing the best that he could and he was really struggling, but doing the work or trying his best. And that gives his parents some peace of mind. And I'd argue that maybe his parents don't deserve that peace of mind. We're not privy to all the circumstances that led Connor to this point, but we are told, suggested that he was addicted to substances. He had been to rehab several times, and he was generally a bad person. In fact, rumor has it that in the play, he is a bullying asshole, whereas in the film, they try to give him a bit more of a positive storyline, I guess, to maybe redeem him or make him more sympathetic to the audience. And this is my problem, right? Though it's sad that someone takes their own life, I don't think that should be an excuse to suddenly look at their entire past with rose-colored glasses. I think that the fact that his parents' shortcomings probably contributed a lot to him taking his own life shouldn't be erased for the sake of helping them grieve better. I think that part of the grieving process is really accepting what happened, how it happened, and coming to terms with that. But if you're having this kid tell you lies and fairy tales about your son to make you feel better about the fact that you weren't able to perhaps give him the attention that he needed or offer the help that he needed to overcome all of these challenges and struggles, I don't think it's fair for Connor's memory, and I don't think it's fair for his parents' guilt. I don't think it's fair for the grieving process. And accepting that harsh reality is part of grieving his son. It's part of life. And then out of nowhere, Zoe likes Evan. They have this song called Only Us, which I also really liked from the original recording. But in the film, it doesn't work because Caitlin Dever, great actress, not a good singer. And also, he looks like 10 years older than her. This is not a couple. Also, there's zero chemistry between them. There was like zero build-up to this moment where she's basically professing her liking for him and asking him to talk about other things that aren't Connor because I like you for you, not just because you were friends with my brother. I don't know why she would like him. There's nothing in this film that has made him remotely likable in a romantic way, just uncomfortable. And the surrogacy situation between Evan and Connor's parents get to a point where they invite Evan and his mom over for dinner and they offer to help him out pay for college because they set up a bunch of money to the side for Connor, but now that Connor's gone, their new son could really use the money. And the mom is like, actually, we don't need any handouts, thank you very much, but we're not going to rely on the help of strangers. And I gotta side with not Evan's mom. Take the money. There's something that I've learned along the way is that if people want to give you money willingly, you don't say no. You just say thank you. And you take it because life is hard, right? The economy is so if someone is willingly giving you their money, take it and walk away. And this is when Alana starts asking the right questions. So Alana has set up a fundraiser to raise $100,000 to help rebuild this community of orchards or like this something related to nature but also mental health, and she's very adamant that they need to reach the goal so that they can spread awareness. And when the donations start slowing down, she starts questioning like, hey Evan, did you actually really know Connor? Because the dates don't match up. Like, you only got your cast in September, but you say you broke your arm in June, and the emails, the dates are also kind of iffy. And Evan again has an opportunity to tell a very calm human being the absolute truth, but instead he doubles down and he shows her a screenshot of the letter that he wrote himself that the parents confused for Connor's suicide letter. And he tells her, please don't post this anywhere. I'm just showing this to you to prove to you that we were friends. And Alana just straight away posts it online. She doesn't even waste any time. It's quite astonishing how quickly she went from I won't post it anywhere to here's the suicide letter. And that letter kind of turns people against Connor's parents because now they're realizing, wait a minute, why are Connor's parents, who are rich by the way, asking for donations for this fundraiser? Or why don't they give their own money, since it was kind of their son that offed himself and it was their responsibility to be there for him and they weren't. The whole situation escalates online and it causes a huge argument between Connor's parents. Zoe's there, and then Evan shows up because he feels like he should be there. And this is the one scene that I cannot unsee. It is so bizarre. And Evan's in the room and he sees this family just like infighting, imploding upon themselves. And then he interjects and finally comes clean and tells them that suicide note was not written by Connor. It's not even a suicide note. It's a note that I wrote myself as part of an assignment from my therapist. And his parents are like in disbelief, like, wait a minute, what? That you lied about everything? And he just starts singing, but like belting. And so you have this moment that's supposed to be like an emotional, cathartic moment where everything comes to a halt. And you're supposed to like really feel the pain of the characters, but instead you're watching this family like being shouted at by a singing depressed teenager who looks like he's in his 30s. And I just could not take this scene seriously. The subject matter is so like delicate, and yet I just couldn't stop laughing. It was a lot. Like, that's a lot, Robin. This obviously drives a rift between Evan and the family, but Zoe does tell him that her parents have decided not to tell the truth to the public. They've decided to take all the blame because they're scared if they do come clean and tell everyone what Evan did, he might do something to himself. He might hurt himself, and they've already lost a son. So Evan goes back to the park where he broke his arm, and he has another full-on belty song. Oh my God, he's crying so much at this point. He's really feeling all the emotions. And this is finally when we understand what happened when he broke his arm, and turns out he didn't fall from a tree like he kept saying. He climbed a tree, and then he got to the top and he tried to kill himself. He let go, but I guess he didn't find a tree tall enough because he only ended up breaking his arm. And once again, this is where the doing too much is bad comes in. He is screaming and crying, and he's just scrunching his face, and it looks painful and uncomfortable, but also kind of funny, because it's not conveying the emotions that the character is meant to be feeling in this moment. I just couldn't stop laughing. It's a very cathartic moment for the character, clearly, and it's very obvious that Ben Platt feels very strongly about this character, but it just doesn't work. But by the end of the song, he has this euphoric moment, and he decides to come clean with his mom and tell her the truth that he tried to off himself when he broke his arm. And then you have his mom just singing this close to his face. Julianne Moore, great actress, love her, also can't sing. And it's weird because either the songs are saying stuff that they've already said in dialogue right before, or they're adding dialogue to an already existing dialogue that isn't matched by the other person singing. Like when he's telling his parents and they're talking back to him and he's singing back to them. And now in this moment, she starts singing to him, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It feels off. But they kind of make up, and they're in a better place. And then we get the ending, which they've changed for the film. In the play, no one ever finds out the truth, and Evan Hansen, I guess, is exempt of responsibility, and he just moves on with his life, and it ends. But in the film, he actually decides to come clean to everyone. He posts a video where he admits to lying about everything and that it's not Connor's parents' fault. He's further isolated by the backlash, but this is when he finally decides to take an interest and find out who Connor was, find out more about him. He tracks down a video of him playing the guitar and singing while he was in rehab, another moment that brings solace to his parents. And I wish that this part where we get to discover more of Evan would have lasted longer and maybe substituted some of the other creepy scenes that were needed in the first place, because this is where we finally humanize this character that was a catalyst for this entire story, that is both being villainized but also glamorized by different members of his family. No one is willing to kind of face who he was, really. No one really talks about it, so we never really get to understand who Connor was. It's frustrating. All we see is this 30-year-old man cry his eyes out for no fucking reason. And after graduation, he meets up with Zoe at this place that Connor loved to go to, and they don't end up together, thank God, because that would have been creepy, just remembering that speech that he gave her where he professed his love even though it was her brother talking. That was a big no-no. But she does say that, they're moving on with their lives, and she wanted to take him here so he could see this beautiful place that Connor loved so much. And in the end, I guess Evan is ready to face the world. He's no longer this anxiety-filled teenager. He's a bit more mature and able to handle normal conversations. And the movie ends, and it just felt very, very unsatisfactory on all counts. Ugh! Like I said, I was a fan of the songs. I still have some of them on my playlist. A few of them are my go-to karaoke songs when I'm driving by myself. But I don't know what happened when they transferred the story from the stage to the big screen. I think that everything that made the story so relatable and, I guess, good to justify the amount of Tonys that it won was lost in translation, and they replaced all of it with a very heavy-handed movie about mental health, and I don't even think they handled any of those topics properly. I don't think we left the movie with a better understanding of these challenges that people face. I don't think we left the film better understanding Evan and his challenges. Again, even if we suspend the disbelief that this 30-year-old looking man is a 17-year-old teenager struggling with mental health, even if that casting was good, I still don't think the execution of the film works at all. It's bizarre. It almost forces you to feel sad. It pushes these very somber tones on you, but they don't feel deserved. It's just a movie that doesn't feel deserving. Shouldn't exist. By far the worst musical I've ever seen in my life, but I haven't watched Cats, so maybe that one will top this off. And I think that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of this film, and should I review Cats? Are there any other musicals out there worthy of talking about? Cinderella is another one that I have on my list, which I've been avoiding like the plague because it's got James Corden. But yeah, those are like 2 ideas that I've thrown out there, but let me know. And until next time, stay safe, stay sane, stay stupid, and stay stuttering. Bye, guys.